Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our first end of year fundraising campaign event. We're really excited to have you here. Today, I would like to introduce Monroe. He is, as all of you or most of you probably know, our founder and technical director for AguaClara, and he will be talking about the state of AguaClara. I'm going to drop in the Give Butter link into the chat just in case you don't have it, and if it gets drowned out by other discussion later, I will drop it in again at the end. Yeah, and now I will pass it back over to Monroe.
Thank you, Azumi, and welcome everyone. And I invite you to drop questions in the chat as we go along, and then we will have some time at the end that I can go back to those. And if we don't get back to them, I will do my very best to get back to you with an answer by email later. So thank you all for joining us. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to give an update on what's happening in the world of AguaClara. And although I have the privilege of giving this presentation, there are really multiple organizations and thousands of people who have contributed to this effort. High on that list are donors who make it possible for AguaClara Reach to spread safe water on tap to more communities, and also to spread engaged learning opportunities to new universities. I also want to highlight Agua para el Pueblo in Honduras and Gran Vicas in India. The students who have conducted the research and created the designs, and the AguaClara Reach staff and volunteers who have given so freely of their time and who do amazing work. So gratitude for all of those contributions. I also wanted to acknowledge that there's a really wide range of expertise around the topic of water treatment in this audience. I'm going to try to have a bit of empathy for all of you as I present, and that probably means that I won't quite give the presentation that any of you want. But I will do my best to try to strike middle of the road and something that engages all of you. Feel free to type questions in and let us know what is confusing or what you'd like to hear more about. I want to start tonight with an overview of where we're going, so you have a sense of the roadmap for this evening. We're going to begin with a chance to meet the faculty who are guiding the programs at 3 universities, the AguaClara programs at 3 universities. Then I'll talk about some stories of transformed communities, some of the ways that we're thinking about accelerating the spread to more communities, the niche where AguaClara is working and how that fits into the bigger picture, and finally, some about the AguaClara infrastructure design engine. So with that, I want to turn it over, give an opportunity for, beginning with Ruth Richardson at Cornell University, to say a few words. Ruth, are you available to unmute?
I am. Can you hear me?
Perfect, yes.
Great. Hello. As Monroe said, I am currently the advisor to the AguaClara Cornell program, the first AguaClara program that Monroe founded. I have been involved with AguaClara for about 15 years, including attending, going twice with the student groups down to Honduras, as well as advising project teams since then. I am very interested in sort of going forward in terms of trying to bring AguaClara technologies into the United States, including in particular focused on Puerto Rico, which is a part of the US that really could benefit from AguaClara technology. So I think with that, unless there's something else you want me to say, Monroe, it's good to be here and good to get the update. Thank you,
Ruth. Thank you, Ruth. That was perfect. Is Brian Rahm on tonight? He will likely be joining the AguaClara program as a co-leader with Ruth. He's a senior research associate at Cornell. And he wrote me and said he participated with AguaClara prior to recorded history, back in the days of the Plant Zero, even before Ohohona. And his hope is for student teams who might explore how AguaClara's approach to engineering can be applied to the wicked water problems in New York State. And now we'll go over to the Ohio State University AguaClara program. Is Michael on tonight? And if not, we'll pass it to Patrick.
Hi, everyone. Yep. Michael wanted me to express he wasn't able to make it due to a family emergency, but I can introduce both of us. So starting with me, Patrick Sowers. I'm a senior lecturer here at OSU, Ohio State University, helping to manage some of the AguaClara Reach initiatives that we've been working for. Dr. Hagenberger, he's the one that kind of started this ball moving forward about 5 years ago, just in a shot in the dark with an email to Monroe saying, hey, we really like this water treatment stuff. We would like to use it in some of our project work in Tanzania, and we connected via Zoom long before the world knew what Zoom was. So excited to continue to grow the AguaClara program here at OSU, and excited to get to know all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And finally, and last but not least, William Pennock at New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Good evening, everyone. My name is William Pennock. I'm an assistant professor at NJIT. I started in the fall of 2020, talking to a computer screen. So this is just how I started, and now we're in person. But I do research for treatment, very much like the work with AguaClara. And I teach on that subject at the graduate level, and at the undergraduate level, I teach fluid mechanics and hydraulic engineering. I got connected with AguaClara by having the privilege of doing my PhD with Monroe at Cornell, and then spending a few months in India working alongside AguaClara Reach and Gram Vikas before the pandemic shut that down. But that project's still ongoing. And I think some of what Monroe talks about today, Monroe, even though I had to step away from it, really all of the work has been done by Monroe. So anyway, it's been amazing to see how that it's led to the design engine. So I wanted to start getting some projects going here at NJIT. We have a few students working around the subject of lead. In fact, it's a preliminary release, but we got some PAP3 funding that we were approved for to do it. But I want to start collaborative teams that work with the OSU and Cornell teams in the coming semester. We have identified some students who would be interested, and I want to scale in the future to become a project team at NJIT and part of the curriculum.
Great. Thank you, William. And the honor was for me as well to have you as my graduate student. So thank you. So now, about towns that have been really impacted in a positive way by having AguaClara plants. So there are now 23 towns between Central America and India that have AguaClara plants providing safe drinking water. And I want to tell a story of several of those towns that have really been transformed. I'm going to talk about San Nicolas with the theme of resilience. I'm going to talk about Jesus de Ortoro and how they bought some of their watershed, and about Tamara investing in their infrastructure. And then 4 more towns showing how AguaClara is spreading in the valley north of Tegucigalpa, Honduras. So here's the plant at San Nicolas. It was built in 2014. And it was the very first plant that has a stacked rapid sand filter included in the original design. The stacked rapid sand filter was invented just a few years prior to 2014 when this plant came online. And this is what happened. Last year, just a little over a year ago, 2 hurricanes went through Honduras. So first came Eta, and there's its track. And then about 11 days later, they got hit by Iota. And those two hurricanes really dumped water on all of Central America, and obviously really hit Honduras and Nicaragua very, very hard. And there's San Nicolas. So I could have told stories about other plants, but I got good data for San Nicolas by going to Facebook. So Facebook is one of the sources of data for tonight. So it's what happened in San Nicolas. And to give the context, this is the San Pedro Sula airport after the hurricanes. And this is the airport where I brought several hundred Cornell students to Honduras over the years. So it gives you a sense of how much water hit Honduras. So the story of San Nicolas is that the community water company had the resources necessary to recover from those hurricanes without needing to seek outside assistance. And during the recovery effort, they posted regular updates on social media while they repaired their pipeline. So the issue is that they have a 14-kilometer long pipeline, and there were multiple breaks in that pipeline due to rivers washing out the crossings. Here we see a tree that fell across their pipeline, and so they are getting rid of that tree. They had to bring in more pipes to replace the pipes that were damaged or washed away. And so they worked for days to get everything repaired. You can see here one of the stream crossings where there clearly was a lot of fresh erosion on this stream from the hurricanes. And so they had to reconstruct a crossing for the pipeline. And here's a pipe crossing where the pipe had broken. You can see the break right there. And here they are repairing that. So all of that happened in about a week. And then they got water back onto the town. And like a week is a really long time to go without water. And there were lots of people posting on Facebook about, how soon do we get water? But they worked at it and they got everything fixed. They brought water back on. And then this is another post from just a little bit later on December 10 of 2020, with them proudly showing the water treatment plant doing exactly what it was designed to do, treating really, really dirty water and making water that was meeting EPA standards. Here's another story. This is Jesus de Arturo, just a brief story that they proudly post on Facebook that they've purchased some of their watershed as a way of protecting their future water for the community. So they purchased part of the watershed as part of that, making it a protected watershed. Here's Tamara. Tamara is the second generation AguaClara plant built in Honduras. And they, over the years, have just consistently wanted to keep on improving the plant to include the latest technologies that AguaClara was providing. So you can see there's a blue section of the plant. That's where they added the stack rapid sand filter. That was added now 10 years ago. We're at the 10-year mark for the addition of the world's first stack rapid sand filter. They also completely financed from the water tariff and from donations from within the community, from community members, to build this additional water storage tank so that they would have improved water service to the community. So all this about investing in their own infrastructure. And now a story about 4 communities in the valley north of Tegucigalpa. This is just right next to Tamara. There's another plant that went in next in 2009, serving 4 villages that we now call Cuatro Comunidades. So you can see where the water treatment plant is with the logo. And that plant went in, and here's a photo of that plant in the operator Darwin. And inside the plant, it's a simple, like a 3rd generation AguaClara plant. So now they have a water treatment plant, and they've got neighbors. There are communities close by who are seeing the difference in health of the children, and they're wanting water treatment plants too. And The next plant that really came online was Las Moras. It took 10 years, but Las Moras came online, and Las Moras was funded almost entirely by the community. They raised community funds, they saved for years to get the money. The women of the community really did the hard work of building that plant. And they've done it without outside donations. So that's plant 2. The next one is completely different. So this is Campo Verde, and it was built by a developer. And that developer apparently saw the benefit of having safe water for the development as part of the pitch for probably being able to get more money for those homes. And so the developer looked at the Cuatro Comunidades plant and literally copied it. So he just looked at the plant and made another copy of it. So here it is. And it's simple, it's rustic, and inside it looks a whole lot like the Cuatro Comunidades plant because it really is a copy. So here's the Cuatro Comunidades plant. There's a Campo Verde plant. They're just copies. So that's plant number 3. That plant was fully brought online just recently with additional technical help because some of the inner parts were actually not done correctly because they were just copying and didn't get it right. But that plant has been fixed and brought online and is working. The last example in this neighborhood is Divina Providencia. They built a competing technology, a multiple stage filtration plant in 2010. That plant didn't work, and so they still don't have safe drinking water. And they have been trying to figure out how to get an AguaClara plant. And this week, some of the women from that community were in the APP Agua para el Pueblo offices, and paperwork is being signed, and they are starting that project, and they will be obtaining financing through Azure, which is with the Catholic Relief Services. It's a finance program that will provide them with a loan to build the plant, and then they will pay that back over the next decade or so. So 4 communities right next to each other. Once one community had a plant, they were all really eager to get an AguaClara plant as well. So highlights here, communities thrive with AguaClara. Households are willing to pay a higher tariff so that they can protect their watersheds and improve their water infrastructure, and so that they are resilient when there's a hurricane. They're able to recover from a natural disaster, and the communities are eager to acquire AguaClara water treatment plants. So now the question is, how do we increase the rate of spread of AguaClara plants? And the goal is to do this by aligning incentives and lowering the barriers, making it easier for communities to do this. And the barriers that we want to lower include making it easier to start AguaClara programs in new countries with new implementation partners. So make it easier for new implementation partners to start the process of building plants. Another step is make it easier for implementation partners to start individual projects of single communities. And the last step is to think about it from the community perspective and make it easier for a community to obtain, operate, and maintain an AguaClara plant. We're working at all 3 of these kind of critical pieces, making it easier to start in new countries, making it easier for an implementation partner to build a new plant for a community, and making it easier for communities to obtain and maintain a system. So at the country scale, at trying to develop a new program in a new country, new implementation partners require detailed designs, they require fabrication instructions, and they require a fair amount of training. And the solution is for us to be able to provide, AguaClara Reach to be able to provide those detailed designs and fabrication manuals, which is something that is still on our to-do list, and then to work with implementation partners who can help provide the training for the new implementation partners. So do this kind of south to south spread. To help make it easier to start up a new project within a country, a new community, the obstacle there is kind of interesting. There's multiple obstacles, a lot of them related to funding. And here's one of the funding bottlenecks, that in order to get a project funded, you need to have a budget. And in order to have a budget, you need to have a design. And in order to have a design, you need to pay engineers to create that design. So you need funding to get started. So this funding dilemma is one of the things that makes it difficult for communities to start the process, because they need the funding in order to even get a design so that they can have a proposal to get funding. So our approach is to work at that. We don't completely solve it, but we make it easier by not having any initial cost for a detailed hydraulic design from AguaClara Reach. So no initial cost. We also, the final cost that they do end up paying is lower, and we can create a more cost-effective design for the hydraulic part of the plant by automating the design process. And then ultimately, we will need to be paid something in order to create that design. And that design fee is added to the project budget in the construction phase rather than in the design phase. So it's after they already have got funding for the project, that's when the design fee would be paid. And then to make it easier for communities to obtain and maintain their plants, the obstacles have been the high capital costs. We're working at that by using high performing treatment processes, which means they use less concrete, fewer bricks, less rebar, and less PVC in order to build them, so they're lower cost. And we use less expensive generic components rather than very specialized proprietary components. To reduce operating costs, our plants use fewer chemicals and they use much less energy, so that reduces the operating costs. And to reduce the maintenance costs, we eliminate moving parts to minimize failure modes. So all of those make it easier for communities to adopt this technology. So what's our niche? Where does AguaClara fit in kind of the global picture? So let's think about this. There's 7.9 billion people on the planet, and people live in different sizes of settlements, everywhere from a single household out alone by itself, all the way up to Tokyo. Okay, so at the single household level, maybe there's a few people in your household. So there's a household somewhere between 1 and 10 people, and all the way up at the other end of the graph is Tokyo with 37 million people. And everything else falls in between, like household, Tokyo, the rest of the world is in between. I guess hermits are slightly down below that. Okay, so the question is, where are all the people? And the people, the 7.9 billion people are, I'm gonna put them in these decades, groups of 10. And I have pretty good information about where the people are at the upper end of this scale, and did some good guessing about what's happening at the lower end. I might be off by a factor of 2 in these numbers, but I think the point of this is still very clear. So I've put just now the 7.9 billion people across these categories of sizes of human settlements. So there's roughly 2 billion people in cities that are larger, 2.6 billion that are larger than 1 million people. Okay, so that's where the people are sitting. And for the large cities, this is a picture of Chicago's water treatment plant. Large cities, central governments have been involved in helping to make sure that those large cities worldwide have access to water treatment plants and hopefully have access to safe drinking water. And at the small scale, at the household and small village scale, there's been a plethora of technologies and options for treating water, and non-governmental agencies have been working at that scale for many decades. And I contend, and I've contended for a long time, that AguaClara is in this middle ground that is kind of this gap where neither non-governmental organizations nor central governments have done a good job of providing service. This is not to discount the fact that at the lower end, where non-governmental organizations are working, there's still a lot of work to be done as well. So there's the niche where AguaClara is working in that scale between a couple hundred to tens of thousands of people. And the next question is, how many communities are in each of these categories? And this is where it gets even more interesting. So the number of communities in each of these bins is here, roughly. There's tens of thousands of water treatment plants of cities that are larger than, say, 100,000 people. And there are literally millions of communities that are larger than 100. And that we have to think about, because if there are millions of communities in this niche where AguaClara is working to provide water treatment plants that will safely provide quality water, you have to think about how to make it work for providing millions of designs. When I began the AguaClara program, or maybe I shouldn't take credit for that, because I feel like students forced me to do this. So anyway, when students forced me to begin the AguaClara program, there's a whole story there. Early on, we had this insight. We don't have the time to design custom water treatment plants for millions of communities. At that time, we were just thinking about the thousands in Honduras. And just like 2 years into designing, after designing the first plant and then designing the next 2 plants, students came back to me and they complained and they said, we don't have the time to design custom water treatment plants for 2 communities per year. And that was one of the things that really pushed me to begin thinking about how do we automate this design process. Mass production of identical parts is something that we all know about. That's part of the Industrial Revolution. The AguaClara Infrastructure Design Engine, or AID, is not about mass producing parts, it's about mass producing custom designs. So it's looking at it at a very different way, not mass producing parts, but mass producing customized designs. So imagine this, imagine being able to instantly design an airplane based on the desired number of passengers. So you'd go to your computer and you'd pick your favorite language and you type something in like design airplane and passengers equal 4. And there you go, you get a Cessna airplane. And then you decide, wait a second, I want a bigger airplane. So you type in design airplane and passengers equals 525, and you get an Airbus 380. Wouldn't that be amazing if you could just like, there it is, simple, done, and you'd get everything about that airplane. When you do that design, all the parts change, the type of engine changes, the number of engines change, the number of decks on the aircraft change, the size of the fuel tanks change, the number of exits change, everything changes, but there's one thing that doesn't change. In all cases, it has to fly. And that's kind of like what we're trying to do. We're trying to design water treatment plants that you can type in, design a water treatment plant, flow equals 20 liters per second. You get a design back for that water treatment plant. And if I change that 20 to 100 or to 2, I get another design back. And in all cases, the plant has to produce safe drinking water. And these designs have to be at a really high level of detail. They have to show all the parts. So just to illustrate that, we're going to take away the walls and we're going to look inside the filter. And inside that filter is a whole mess of pipes and parts. And there's detail like that throughout the plant that has to all be there so that it can be built. And we have this problem of there's this wide range of community sizes that we're trying to provide designs for. So we're going to start at the bottom end of the scale at about half a liter per second, which would be good for just over 100 people. So here's a potential design created by AID, the AguaClara Infrastructure Design Engine. It has an entrance tank, it's got a flocculator, it's got a clarifier, and it's tiny. Its measurements are just a few meters long. Now we'll scale up. We'll go to 1.5 liters per second. So we went from 0.5 to 1.5. The sedimentation tank, the clarifier got bigger. We're going to go up again, now to 4.4 liters per second. Now we have 2 sedimentation tanks. So the number of engines just increased. We got 2 instead of 1, but we're still going to make safe drinking water. We'll increase again. We go to 12 liters per second. Now our sedimentation tanks got a whole lot longer. Flocculator got bigger. Entrance tank got bigger. Let's go bigger. 35 liters per second. So now we're changing the design. We're switching to a stack rapid sand filter made out of concrete. The reason I didn't show a stack rapid sand filter in the previous designs is because that's still in our to-do list. So now we have 6 sedimentation tanks and a new version of an entrance tank and a different version of a flocculator. We've kind of swapped out the kind of engines that we're using. And the last one, now we're up at 100 liters per second, much larger plant. And I'm no longer showing any details within this because it's too big of a design to actually show all the pieces. But there's 100 liters per second, 4 filters instead of 2. And at each of these designs, there's so much detail and there's so many things that have to be created. So every single pipe has to be drawn, has to be sized correctly, placed in the right location. And all that is done in the environment that we're using, which is Onshape. And there's 2 more really powerful capabilities that this design tool has. It has the ability to create a bill of materials, which is like a parts list with prices and supplier information, so details about where this part actually comes from. And the design is customized to use the parts and construction techniques for each implementation partner. So if Agua para Pueblo wants a plant or Gran Vicas wants a plant, the parts that go into it will be different and the plant will be drawn differently because of that. So here's an example of the parts list. Don't worry, we're not going to go through this table in detail. I just want to show you it creates this messy long table of all the parts. And if we look in detail at just one part, there's a 1/2-inch PVC pipe. We know who the vendor is. We know the part number. We know how much it costs. We know how many meters of pipe there are in this plant. And we know what the total cost of that piping is for this plant. And we know what the total cost of the materials are that go into making this plant. This was $114,000 just in the materials for that particular plant. So how do those parts get in there? It starts with parts catalogs, the information that we get from the implementation partners about where they get their parts. We put that in a Google Sheet that ends up being transferred into Onshape. And every part as we create it is pulled from essentially from that database. So when we're drawing a pipe in Onshape, we have to say, who's that pipe for? Is it for Agua para Pueblo or Gran Vicas? Because they're going to have different suppliers. And then we say how big we need that pipe to be and how long it needs to be. We get a pipe in Onshape, it draws the pipe for us, and it immediately puts it in the parts list so that we know what that part is and how much it costs. One of the cool things that this allows us to do is to immediately see the impact of cost on our designs. So when we're comparing different design alternatives, we immediately see at least what the parts cost impact is. So this automated design approach, it reduces the project startup costs and makes it easier for communities to go through the project cycle where they're not caught in this trap of needing money to get started, needing money to get a design so that they can actually get started. And this allows us to provide designs at no initial cost because it doesn't actually take us much time at all to provide that initial design. So our niche is in this middle territory where it's maybe between a couple hundred people and several tens of thousands of people. That's where this design tool is filling a need and where we hope to be scaling up in the coming years. I want to also share briefly about how does information flow in this network? Because the AguaClara ecosystem, it isn't just AguaClara Reach, it's a whole network of organizations. So let me put them up here. So first of all, there's supporters and volunteers. AguaClara Reach is primarily a volunteer organization. There are 2 paid employees. I get to be one of them, and Izumi gets to be the other. But there are many, many volunteers who help make it all happen. Then there's the university groups, and you've met the 3 university group leaders tonight. That's the RIDE program, Research, Invent, Design, Empower. And that's where new ideas are being generated, new processes for treating water are being developed. We're also working with the partner organizations that are building these plants. The partner organizations get from us the designs, and we provide technical support and best practices. And they in turn give insights about best ways to design the plants, to make them easier to fabricate, or to improve how they operate in the field. And they also send back problems that they encounter. And this is, I'll give an illustration. Watch the highlighted icons as we move. Information about a problem that shows up in the field, like the problem of how do we remove this color from this water in Gracias? That problem comes back to AguaClara Reach, and then goes to the universities. They create solutions, and that comes back to AguaClara Reach, and then goes back to the partner organizations. So we have this easy connection between students and the partner organizations, and ultimately with the communities that are actually the beneficiaries who are running these plants, the plant operators who are running these plants. They're connected to the partner organization. The partner organizations have their whole ecosystem around them as well. They're working with the water ministry, with development banks and other funding sources, and the whole context within each country. So this rich ecosystem is what makes this all possible. So now you're wondering what's next, or at least I'm wondering what's next. What's next for AguaClara Reach? Because we've made incredible progress on the design tool aid this year. There's still more work to be done. One of the pieces that we have not yet finished is the whole chemical dosing system, how we add the chemicals into the plant. These are some parts that we've already been working on, but there's more work to be done there. I mentioned that I'm not showing the stack rapid sand filter for the small plants. So we have stacked rapid sand filters that have been built, but we don't have a design for that yet in Onshape, and so that's on our to-do list. And there's this ongoing review process where we create designs, and then we meet with implementation partners, Agua para el Pueblo and Gran Vicas, and get feedback about what works for them. How would they actually like this to be customized to make it work well for how the site they're putting it on. And I don't have any great images for this, but then another big task for us is to create training materials for new implementation partners so that it's easier for them to learn all the fabrication steps that go into building these plants. So gratitude. Gratitude multiplies with safe water on tap. And here are just a few lovely pictures taken by students a couple of years ago, our last trip to Honduras. Gratitude, having safe water on tap, a real smile. And I am happy now to take questions and comments, reflections. So I'm going to quit sharing, and it's now your turn. I'm wondering, are there questions in chat that I should be answering? No, I don't think so. So questions, anyone? Reflections, dreams?
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Amanda.
Hey. It's really exciting to see all the different ways that AguaClara has evolved. I don't know. I was on the team like in 2013 or so, and I think AguaClara, like the whole concept of community and community informing the work that needs to be done. I'm not an engineer right now, but I still work with an organization that has a very similar idea. And I think this idea that like communities, when they're funding their own project, has been like something that really stuck with me. So it's just really exciting to see how this has scaled just so much in the last 10 years. And then this idea that you'll continue to grow to other countries. And I'm just really excited to continue supporting AguaClara.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you.
Hello, Monroe.
Hi, Erica.
I'm so glad to see you. Thank you for the invitation. I just want to say that I have been blessed with the opportunity to see the growth of AguaClara in Honduras since the beginning, since the first plant in Ojojona. And all through these years, AguaClara has been a source of inspiration for us. I work at Zamorano University, and I'm a professor in water resources. And every year we have been very happy to see students come to Honduras to learn more about these technologies. And it's been so inspiring that we decided to build our own water treatment plant based on the AguaClara model. Because not just because we have now the opportunity to teach the technology to our students, but more than that, we want to teach our students the importance of designing based on the local needs and designing based on the inspiration to provide a solution, not for a company, not for in order for the students to make money or make profit, but because we believe that having access to clean and safe water is a key for development. And so through our plant and through the visits and through how much we've learned from AguaClara, we've been able to send that message to our students. We have one student, no longer student, he just graduated last Saturday. Luis Carlos is now in Ithaca in Cornell, learning more about AguaClara and working with you guys to probably, hopefully in the future, bring more technology for communities down here. So on behalf of Zamorano, I just want to send my appreciation and my continuous admiration for the work you do. And also, please know that if we can help in any way we can, we are always willing to do so. And congratulations. I'm so glad to see you again.
Thank you for those very kind words, Erika. And I am also delighted to have this additional connection where Ohio State University is also connected to Zamorano. And so that is, I'm delighted, and may these connections continue to grow and strengthen.
Sure, such a small world. Hi, yeah. Patrick.
Looks like we have some questions in the chat, Monroe.
Okay, my question is, have you had to think about scalability with the design due to things like increased water demand? Some of the plants have been around for over 10 years, and has this put any stress on the plants themselves? That is a wonderful question. There are many communities in Honduras where during the dry season, they struggle that they don't have enough water. So I know that that is one major constraint for communities, just wishing that they had access to more water. And of course, with climate change and other changes in population growth, that only gets more severe. Unfortunately, our plants can't make more water. I'm also aware that there are plants, many of our plants start up, and we think that they're going to start up at less than full capacity because they were supposedly over-designed from the beginning. And then it turns out that almost from day one, they're operating at close to capacity. And that's a whole other issue. And I'm realizing I'm not answering Philip's question, but I'm going to keep on going. And one of the issues there is that the communities that we're working with in Honduras are almost all not using water meters. And so there's not a strong incentive for each household to conserve water. And so their households are using more water than what you would expect. So that's one of the reasons why communities run out of capacity early. Okay, and then there's Cuatro Comunidades, and they are expanding service to new households. Actually, there is a lot of growth in that part of the world because people are moving out of Tegucigalpa. And so Cuatro Comunidades added a little pilot plant that treats about 1 liter per second onto their 6 liter per second plant to get additional water. And I am sure that there will be more opportunities for those kinds of expansions in the future. Another example would be Marcala. They had one plant. We built a second plant to increase capacity. And there's talk of now adding a third plant to capture water from an additional source to add even more capacity to that town. So that will continue to happen. And then another question, I spoke about funding challenges. Can you speak as to what some of the pathways are that APP and Gran Vicas typically pursue or consider when seeking to fund a project and implement a new AguaClara plant? I don't know as much about where Gran Vicas would be getting their funding. I know they have in the past worked with the Gates Foundation, and there's also opportunities for them to get funding through the Indian government. But I'm more familiar with the Honduran context, and their funding comes from many different sources. For many years, the Swiss, wow, how did I lose that? COSUDE, Swiss Development Cooperation, has been had funded a nice number of plants both in Honduras and Nicaragua, but then their funding priorities shift, and so that ends, and then you have to look elsewhere. The new hot source for funding really is this approach of Azure, which is providing funding ultimately through banks, but with a lower interest rate, so that communities can access something that's more similar to municipal bonds, but it's not municipal bonds, but they're getting a loan from a bank and then they'll be paying it back. I have this dream that maybe with the US emphasis on making life a little bit more tenable in the northern triangle of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, that there will be some funding freed up for building infrastructure that we would get involved in. We'll have to see how that evolves. There's a question about one barrier that's often important to lower is that of acceptance and promotion by trusted authorities. Yeah, like what does it take to convince a community? My experience with getting communities on board for water treatment plants is that communities are really easy to convince that they would like to have the water treatment plant. They might not get to the place of, we're going to collect money, walking up and down the streets of the town. Maybe they're not willing, maybe they don't jump to that right away. But the interest in having a water treatment plant, being happy to raise their water tariff to support the additional chemicals and the plant operators, getting to that level is relatively easy. And the way to make that transition is to take the community leaders to visit a community that has an AguaClara plant and let the community members in the community that has an AguaClara plant do the selling.
Hi, Monroe.
Hi, Perla. Oh my goodness, all the way from La 34. So La 34 is like plant zero. It happened before AguaClara officially got off the ground. So Perla, take it away.
Yeah, of course I have to say something. Oh my God, just to see your face, I'm overcome by emotion. So exciting. By the way, my background is my freshman year dorm, McFadden, if any of you guys are familiar with it. I just wanted to say a couple things. First off, I was so fortunate to be part of the team that designed the plan for La 34 back in, gosh, 2004, 2005. So dating myself a little bit, but it was one of the most amazing experiences that I had that I carry with me to this day. And of course, Monroe, you were one of the masters of it. And you took us under your wing and, you know, taught us the technical aspect of it and of course the cultural aspect of it. And it's so inspiring to see the work that you're doing to this day, 16 years later. I think I might've been plant zero or maybe plant one or plant half. There might've been one before us, but it's incredible. And I see Professor Richardson also on, so great to see you there as well. And then I also saw, which is crazy to think, Kina, who I believe was 12 back then, maybe, or maybe 9. She was very young. She was a little kid, and Juanita, I think, is on as well. And gosh, you guys are family to me. So it's really, really nice to see you on. I just kind of wanted to chime in and say that, I mean, that's the depth and the power of this experience. To me, it was way beyond just a project. It was, to me, actually, it wasn't something that I did for credit. It was something that I did because I wanted to. And it was one of the most incredible and amazing experiences. So thank you, Monroe. Great to see you.
Thank you, Perla. What a pleasure. Anyone else want to jump in? We have a few minutes if you'd like. Happy to hear from others.
There are a few things in the chat, Monroe, if you want to check that out.
Yeah, there's a question about, are there barriers to entry here in the US? What are the first few countries that you might anticipate might be most likely to adopt AguaClara technologies outside of the ones where AguaClara is already spreading? Okay, so first the US. There are more barriers to entering into the US. There are some tricks that can be used. One of them is, and Ruth Richardson is working hard on this, is that there may be opportunities in Puerto Rico as part of the United States where there is need and where it might make sense to bring AguaClara technologies. Another approach is to use the AguaClara technologies that will that are not as tightly regulated. And by that I mean flocculation and sedimentation are not very tightly regulated. There's more flexibility there, whereas filtration is like, it's tight. And so to bring our version of a rapid sand filter that is stacked would take more regulatory approval. But I'm pretty confident that bringing a flocculator and a sedimentation tank and then use a conventional rapid sand filter would be easier to get approval for. As far as which other countries, oh man, I wish I had like the golden fleece that would tell me, why did I say golden fleece? But the fleece that would tell me which country is most likely to be the next one. There are many, many countries that we are working with folks in the water sector, Guatemala, Colombia, Ethiopia, Malaysia. So there are places all over the world. I think that the one thing that you're going to find in common with the countries that are potential countries is that if you look at them in Google Earth, they are very, very green. We're looking at places where surface water is a possibility, and so you're looking at places that have lots of rainfall.
Buenas noches, Monroy, ¿me escucha?
Sí.
Le habla
Hola.
Julia desde Bolivia. Muchas gracias por la invitación.
A pleasure.
Muy
Thank you,
interesante
Julia.
lo que ha hecho la presentación, muy interesante. Quería hacerle la siguiente consulta. La asistencia técnica, para dar asistencia técnica, ¿podrían firmar una alianza con institución pública menor a 2,000 habitantes?
¿Podríamos firmar un acuerdo con una
Institución pública pues, del Estado
sí.
para dar asistencia técnica, pero es menor a 2,000 habitantes. Son comunidades muy pequeñas.
Sí. Okay, so the question is, would AguaClara Reach be able to create an agreement, sign an agreement with a public, like a government entity, to provide technical support, and then to be working with communities with populations less than 2,000? Y Julia, yo digo que sí. Estamos explorando varias maneras de tener acuerdos con los entes responsables para construir o dirigir la construcción y operación de las plantas. Y eso podría ser una ente pública, o podría ser una empresa privada, o podría ser una ONG, dependiendo en cómo funciona la cosa en el país. So I'm just saying that we would be willing to work, we would be able to work with either a government agency, a non-governmental agency, or a for-profit, like a business, an engineering firm, as far as the entity that we would work with to provide technical support as they supervise the construction project and supervise the training of the community members. Gracias, Julia.
A ti, Monroy, gracias.
Yeah, and Zoe appropriately added there that we are working with in St. Vincent, their central sewer and water authority. So it's a government entity that we're working with there. I want to respect your time. It's 9 o'clock. I want to thank all of you for coming out. And I really enjoyed seeing all of you here tonight. And I hope that you all have wonderful holidays in the days ahead. And I thank you all for your support of AguaClara Reach. Buenas noches and good night. And be in touch.